Hey, I'm Meow and Cat. With the help of the Elventus staff, we're here to bring you a guide on the mini rework of Wukong.
Been waiting for this.
Wukong has spent quite some time out of the spotlight after his nerfs in Season 8, being played only by his dedicated mains and one-tricks. It's been so bad lately that on patch 10.5, even with the news of his rework on the way, his play rate is only at 0.35% and won't show up at all on most websites. The only presence Wukong had in pro play during Season 9 was in a troll game by Alarim, who happened to be a former Wukong one-trick before turning pro. Needless to say, Wukong hasn't been in a good spot, and with this new mini rework, Riot is attempting to breathe new life into the champion and hopefully bring him back to his long-forgotten glory days as a powerful jungler in Season 4. With this rework, they have made changes to Wukong's kit all across the board. However, the most significant changes were targeted at his W ability, Warrior Trickster. Wukong's old W was a small dash that granted invisibility and left a clone that stands still and attacks everything in its small AoE before disappearing. The ability functions very similarly, but has some key differences. First of all, instead of just standing around, Wukong's clone will now auto-attack nearby enemies, dealing 40 to 60% of Wukong's damage per hit. Warrior Trickster will now also synergize with all your other abilities. This means that your clone is now officially the highest IQ monkey on your team. Some of the ability interactions include Q empowering your clone's next auto-attack, your clone ulting when you do, and your E boosting your clone's attack speed. This offers a lot of outplay potential and increases the versatility of your W. While it may be challenging to find the right situation to utilize the clone's ult, it can be very rewarding. Some potential plays you can make would be knocking up two separated targets, or spreading much more damage in a team fight. Also, by having the clone synergized with all your abilities, it makes his kit way more interactive and increases his potential damage in fights, as well as improving your ability to clear camps and waves effectively. Another big change to Warrior Trickster is the dash range. The dash used to be very small and barely push your champion forward from your clone, which meant that most of the skill shots you were dodging were from your clone body blocking it. Now they are increasing the range of his dash so that it's comparable to something like a Lucian E. This is a massive change as it increases your ability to dodge skill shots by a significant amount, as well as increasing your mobility in general. There is a trade-off, however, as the stealth duration has been slightly decreased. All in all, this is a buff to Wukong's mobility, as the longer dash gives more flexibility to how you dodge around in fights. One last change that's a little more indirect is a change to the ability's animation. The clone animation now completely matches your standing animation, meaning that baiting your opponents into thinking you've activated your clone will be way more effective. An indirect effect of this change is that you'll be seeing way more 500 IQ Wukong clone montages. The next big changes are to Wukong's ultimate, Cyclone. The main change here being that his ult can now be casted twice. The way this works is that 1 second after your first ult finishes, you may recast it within an 8-second window. The second cast of your ult can also knock up enemies, meaning that you can knock them up for a total of 2 times. Your clone, however, can only knock them up once. There are some trade-offs that come with being able to ult twice. Some changes were a decrease in the knockup's duration and spin duration being cut in half. And while the spin duration is lower, the ult now deals damage twice as fast, and every tick of the damage stacks Conqueror and Black Cleaver, granting stronger synergy with these runes and items. Another big change is the damage from his ult is being converted from flat damage to max health damage. This helps with shredding tanks in teamfights or laning against tanks. The ult will still have high AD scaling, however, so you'll have the capability of blowing up squishies in teamfights as well. There are also a lot of quality of life changes that Cyclone has received. One of which is the fact that you can cancel your ult with abilities, while before you had to cancel your ult first to then use abilities. This means that canceling your ult will be more fluid and makes it harder for people to react. Another neat change is when you cancel your ult with your W, the new clone will still be ulting while you cancel it, making your clones much more convincing. A few minor things are that your attack range is reduced during ult, making it easier to get closer to enemies, and you also keep the attack speed buff from your E while you use your ult. The next big change to Wukong's kit is his passive Stoneskin. Stoneskin no longer grants magic resist, but instead grants max HP regen. The passive armor it gives is now higher. The old passive, which gave defensive stats based on the amount of nearby enemies, has been scrapped for a new effect. Now Wukong's abilities and attacks grant a stack of Stoneskin, up to 10 stacks. The stacking works on champions and large monsters, which is a huge buff to Wukong's jungle sustain, as most jungle camps deal physical damage. All of your abilities stack Stoneskin per target hit, meaning if you ult their team, you can have max stacks almost instantly. This makes it so you can still have a huge boost in tankiness during teamfights, functioning similar to his old passive. This also includes your clone, which interacts with all your abilities. It's easier to stack this passive compared to the old passive, as you can still have the full benefit in teamfights quickly, while also being able to make use of it for increased resistance in smaller fights. The big change though is a shift from MR to HP regen, so let's go into how that affects him. First of all, it increases Wukong's effectiveness in the jungle, having extra sustain and armor that stacks from jungle camps. Another important change is that it increases Wukong's effectiveness against physical champions and decreases his effectiveness against magic champions. This results in him generally being stronger in the top lane and weaker in a lot of mid matchups, considering what champions are usually played in these roles. This change also increases Wukong's sustain overall, while especially improving it during fights or in the jungle. These are the end of the big changes, which leads us to a few minor changes coming to Wukong. The first of which are the changes to his Q. Wukong's Q now has much better early game potential, with a massive increase in base damage. His Q scaling has also been changed from 0 to 40% total AD to 50% bonus AD at all levels. This incentivizes building AD. The range was also changed from 125 at all levels to 75 to 175 based on level. This means your range suffers a little bit in the early levels, but after putting 4 points into your Q, it will have a nice increase in range, which will help you secure kills and trade safer in lane. The last change is its cooldown, which has been increased. However, autos and abilities will decrease the cooldown by half a second per tick of damage, which includes your clone as well. These changes help boost Wukong's early levels to trade better and get through the early game a little bit easier. The last ability that received changes is his E. Wukong's E now deals magic damage instead of physical damage, which makes your life slightly less miserable when you're laning into a Ninja Tabby, Frozen Heart Malphite. Really only slightly though. The scaling is changed from AD to AP, which decreases the effectiveness of building full damage. To compensate for this, the base damage was increased. The attack speed buff from his E now lasts longer and is 10% higher than the previous patch. The AoE attack of his E has been increased to make it easier to hit all 3 targets with it. The cooldown has been increased until you max it, and mana costs have dropped from a range of 30 to 50 based on level. Now that we've gone over the abilities, let's wrap up with some new item synergies and potential build options. Some of the best items for Wukong will be items that add to his burst and items that add to survivability. Black Cleaver is now a more potent tank busting option because it stacks much faster with your ult charges, and it increases your movement speed as you ult because of the Phage passive. While Triforce doesn't give you the movement speed during your ultimate, it does provide a lot more burst, which synergizes very well with your Q. Your clone also being able to proc Triforce is a very nice bonus. Tiamat will also be extremely valuable as it speeds up your wave clear and your jungle clear. The on-hit effect can be used by your clone as well, which means that Ravenous Hydra or Titanic Hydra are also very good items for Wukong to build. In terms of survivability, Sterix Gauge, Death's Dance, and Guardian Angel will be your go-to items. These all provide a decent amount of damage, as well as a crucial survivability tool, the sustain from Death's Dance being very notable here. Because Wukong's ult stays active during stasis, buying a stopwatch can be crucial for a teamfight you need to win, and can also be built into a GA. Lethality items will still be a very good option into very squishy compositions, however you will want to gear more towards survivability and disruption. Lastly, Blade of the Ruin King might be a very solid tank busting option, as it is extremely strong on the current patch. We went over a lot in this video, so let's recap. Wukong's W has been changed to have more interaction with the rest of his kit, with some cleanup to animations and an improved dash. His ult now has 2 casts and does more damage to tanks. Wukong's passive lost its MR in exchange for max health regen and stacks off hitting champions or large monsters. Lastly, his Q and E receive some smaller quality of life adjustments overall. So what does this all mean for Wukong players? Wukong's kit will have much more versatility and increased ability interaction, as well as more varied build paths. The changes to his ult from max health damage and changes to his Q to bonus AD scaling balance Wukong in between a bruiser and assassin, so there's viability in building either way. Wukong will be a lot stronger in the jungle due to having the extra armor and health regen, but certain lane matchups will be a lot harder due to his lost magic resistance. Lastly, he will be stronger in tank matchups with the added max health damage, and will see stronger synergy with certain items. These changes are subtle, and yet add a lot of depth to an older champion that hasn't been seeing a lot of love lately. Hopefully this is what he needs to be viable and healthy for the game. Please comment below about what your opinion is with the direction that Riot is taking with some of these mini reworks.